Hey, Coach, so happy you found us. Make sure you subscribe and like. Those are really important. Also, go over and check out teachhoops.com for coaches who want to get better. If you want to win more games, have more fun and less time, let Teach Hoops do it. I have 30 years of coaching. I've been where you've been. I can help you in this process. Let me help you put banners and state titles in your gym. Let me help you do that. Go over and check out teachhoops.com for coaches who want to get better. Let's head off to the video.
Hello, coaches, and welcome to another episode of Coaching Youth Hoops. Today, we do have a special guest, but before we get to that, remember to head over to coachingyouthhoops.com. Check out our new service that we put together just for you. It has everything you need for your basketball season. If you're a K through 8 coach, it's out of the box, just grab and go. It has your basketball practice plans. It has drills that I've tested, other coaches have tested. Everything you need to set up your season, how to communicate with parents, how to communicate with players, all kinds of playbooks, videos, everything. One-stop shop. Stop searching Google and YouTube. These drills and practice plans are all vetted by coaches across the world. So head on over to Coaching Youth Hoops and get your copy of that huge playbook and library we put together. All right, today, guys, we have a special guest. His name is Coach Bill Powers. Again, another Bay Area coach I'm bringing you guys. Bill has over 30 years of coaching experience. That is amazing. He's been a high school coach for both boys and girls. He's also a high school teacher. He's won 5 league championships, an NCS championship, section championship. He was coach of the year in 2009 for Division I basketball at Monte Vista High School. That's in Danville, California. 2015, he was awarded with the NCS Section Honor Coach Award. Coach Powers, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Coach, that's a long time coaching, holding on, and quite the accomplishments. Congrats on that. That's amazing. I can't wait to dive into that a little bit more and your background. Sorry I interrupted you, but I was just like, man, 30 years coaching. Good for you.
Yeah, as I said to you earlier, I mean, I still feel like when I drive in this morning, we had open gym, and I drove up with the same excitement that I did 30 years ago. It hasn't changed a bit.
You got open gym in the morning?
Yeah, we have open gym on 3 days a week at 6 a.m. We go 6 a.m. to 7 a.m.
I love that. When I was coaching at De La Salle, that's when the freshman boys practiced in the morning at 6. It's hard at first, but then they always seem to appreciate it. And I got a little pushback wanting to start that early, but I love that time. I just think, I don't know, it gets your mind ready, gets your set. And then they have the rest of the afternoon to focus on homework or whatever else they're doing, right?
Exactly.
Other sports too. So today's topic, we're going to talk about, and I think this is a real teaching topic, basically how to hold yourself as a coach accountable to your players. So when I asked you what was kind of your passion point, this is something that you brought up, and I don't want to steal your thunder, but please, go into what we had talked about and what the subject of today will be.
Sure. It's a quote that I heard probably about 15 years ago by Mike Leach. He then was the head coach of Texas Tech football. He moved a couple different places. Unfortunately, he passed away not too long ago. At that time, he was the football coach at Mississippi State. And he said that with players and as we watch the game and as players play, that we're either as coaches teaching it or allowing it to happen. We're either teaching it or allowing it to happen. So I think my perspective on that is it keeps me from yelling, we practice that. We never do that at practice. In some way separating myself from the mistakes that are happening. And generally they're targeted. towards other people to hear to get me off the hook.
Right. And I think that's really smart. And as we said, we're both guilty of it, guilty of saying it. But let's unpack that a little bit, because I think that's in this world of it's everybody else's problem, not me, right? That goes for coaches as well. And, you know, we all have to take accountability and be responsible for our mistakes as coaches, as players, as parents, right? As well, you know, that goes along with it. They have to accept responsibility, and you know, we all have to work together in this community, so to speak, this basketball community, right? Of players, coaches, refs, administration,
Parents.
Parents. Yep, exactly. And you know, knowing that the coaches we're doing our best. And I think if we take on this exact philosophy of taking responsibility as a coach for the mistakes that are happening on the court, but I'm going to challenge you on this one a little bit, because, and I want to learn, and I know our coaches want to learn from this as well, is we do practice stuff. Let's just keep it real simple. Let's say, I don't know, keep our offense, right? It's probably a lot of times where it comes up, right? Pass, cut, screen. We work on it every day in practice. Okay, so I pass, I either cut or screen. Okay, so most players, what do they do? They pass and they stand still. We didn't work on that in practice, right?
Right.
So how do you take responsibility for that, and what's a coach to do when that happens?
Yeah, well, I think the responsibility, and as I appreciate you posing it the way that you did, it's who is the statement for? If I call you over and, hey, Bill, like, we do not practice passing and standing. Like, what are you doing? Let's go. That's one thing for him and I to hear. It's another, it is said for the parents or the spectators that are behind me who I'm trying to, like I said, I think I said earlier, remove responsibility. So it more is who needs to hear it, and why do they need to hear it? I think that's sort of the separate, because it's not like not getting on a kid. It's not having high expectations during games to do the work that we practice, but it's just a matter of sometimes we just use that too easily, and it almost like removes the responsibility of the mistake from myself if I go down that path.
Yeah, because then it's a crutch to say, well, hey, it's not me, it's them. We practice this every day, and you know, they're losing because of them, not because of me, right? Practice layups every day, and we only make 30% in a game. That's on them, not on me.
Yeah, and right? I think and I think, you know, for a K through 8 coach who may not be able to, you know, practice that often, so maybe there's going to be more mistakes that might happen because you're not practicing 5 days a week. Right. It makes you think, well, if we're missing the layup, maybe I'm not doing the right drill. And it doesn't mean that, you know, you're not disappointed or upset or, you know, a point of frustration in a game. But at the end of it, we have to go back. Okay, maybe I'm not doing the right drill. Maybe there's not enough. We're doing it dummy without defense. Maybe I need to make more contact. Maybe it needs to be in a live setting. So holding on to it just makes me watch film a little bit differently, have my practice plans created a little bit differently. My coaches are held to a different standard that we always want to take ourselves. And just an example, if I may.
Yeah.
Even within an open gym, we have a freshman who played freshman basketball, and we were talking about the importance next season of running. We really want to be better at running, and just running up the floor in transition and being more consistent when we do it. And he said something to the effect of, well, this kid's name, you know, he might be hard for him. He wouldn't do that. Like, I just looked at him. I said, well, if he didn't do it, who's responsible for it? Like, you, the freshman coach is responsible. And we say it in a way that nobody, you know, doesn't have to be taken personally. It's just we coach the kid for a year. If he's not doing it, well, let's just start with us, start with me, and then we can figure out other reasons why the kid might not have done it after. But we have to keep ourselves front and center.
And I think an offshoot of this same thinking is when you're doing a drill or teaching a drill. Okay, so you're teaching a new drill, and quote unquote, the kids are just not getting it. They're not performing at a standard that you think they should, right? Two things can happen. Two things can happen. One is you continue to do that drill the same way until you basically spend 30 minutes on a 10-minute drill until they get it.
Yep.
Or, and I think this is what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is stop that drill and throw it out for now. Look at the film, or look at, regroup with your coaches and say, okay, this is on us. We're not teaching it the right way. Is that another in practice example?
Yeah, definitely. And I think both of your examples are, there's a reason for it. Sometimes, it's at a point in the season where we're going to do it for 30 just to kind of prove a point, to make you tired, to make you have to deal with fatigue and the teaching that goes along with it. It's probably not going to create it's not the best learning environment, but it might be a teaching environment in the sense that you can do this, or you can get through this, or sometimes it's going to be difficult. And maybe at that point, and I would say strongly that if you get to that moment where it's a 10-minute on the practice plan and you're going from 11 minutes to 25, those 14, 15 minutes, it's not so much the skill that you're trying to teach, but how are these kids responding? Are they going, like, we're a no palms up program. That's a non-negotiable. We do not allow our kids to go palms up. Can they go through that difficult point where they clearly aren't getting it, but they're still showing, they're still going to next play. They're not getting frustrated, if you know what I'm saying. Like, you're probably not going to, if it's, setting up a screen and they just can't get it. If they didn't get it at 5, they're not going to get it at 15 minutes. However, what you can learn about that player, and what you can learn about your players, is how does he or she deal with the adversity of, I want to go to the next drill, I don't want to do this, but will they still give you the effort that you're looking for? Are they giving in? Are they giving in to time, the fatigue, the coaching? Yeah, if you want to teach the skill and you're really concerned about the skill, well, you better stop at 10, because they're not. I don't think it's going to get better. If you can still learn something about your team and about your player, that you can then you can draw back to it after practice. Hey, guys, we did a great job. We didn't get it, but nobody ever gave up. Nobody stopped trying. Nobody went palms up. Nobody started yelling at each other because, it was the screener's fault. No, it's the cutter's fault. And so I think that you can gain from it. But if you think you're going to be getting, like, actually teaching the skill, it's probably not going to happen. So
if for our listeners, what do you mean palms up?
Palms up means that, what am I supposed to do? I've done everything. It's kids do it, players do it, adults do it, to give you the idea, I've done everything I can. And frankly, I'm a person that doesn't believe that anybody on the floor is probably doing everything that they can do. So I really have a problem with kids, and I've seen it. I saw it in our championship game in 2007. I saw a player who was one of the toughest minded players, who played on one of the toughest minded teams by one of the toughest minded coaches in the country. The kid came out, we were up 4 or 5 with like maybe two minutes to go. And he came up, didn't get the ball, and he went palms up. And I have chills as I say that, because I turned to my assistant, I said, we're going to win this game, even though it was only a 2-possession game and we were probably playing a better team. Because when you go palms up, that means what else am I supposed to do? And I don't want our players to think, what else am I? Because there could have been something, change your speed, change your angle, stop, better spacing. There's too many things to be like, when I'm, and they use it to like they're supposed to be off the hook because they do it. And it's, so
well, I think let's dive into that a little, because I definitely that, again, I've said to, I know I've said to my coaches, what else are we supposed to do, right? But let's dive into the player side of that. They're young, right? They don't know, they only have X number of years of experience playing this game. And how do you teach that no palms up, where they like, coach, I just don't know, right? I know how to do X, Y, and Z, right? And you're asking me to do something else in addition to that. But it's like, if you told me, hey, we're going to take a test on tomorrow, right? And the test is on, English, math, and science, and geometry. And I say to you, but I don't know geometry, right? And you expect me to take the test on geometry? I can't,
Yeah, you're going
what am
there,
I supposed to do, right? Yeah. So I'm just using that as an example, right? And I'd love to hear, because I think that does come up more often than we think. And, now that we're having this conversation, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, yeah, I did that. Or I've heard my players say it in some form or fashion.
Yeah, well, it isn't that you don't have questions. It isn't that a player isn't it's not that a player doesn't. I mean, a player could still not understand something. A player could still be struggling with something. And there's a way with your body language and your words to say that without going palms up, because the mistake happens, and it's, I think what I'm thinking more is you've taken the geometry test, or you've had that moment, and then you're looking back and your response is in result to, well, what else am I supposed to do? Because so I think it's more of a response to something that you have some knowledge of, and you're kind of using it as, I think maybe you might even have said it as, no, I think you were referring to the coaches as a crutch, right, of like, so I don't, I'm not sure if it's the perfect analogy of a geometry test when you haven't studied geometry, right, just because we work through, and hey, it's early in the season, you're not going to know things, right? So I think it's, and if I may just take a little shift on that, not putting players in a position where they would feel badly about making a mistake or feel like they would have to go, because you can't really challenge kids until we've taught them well enough. So when you start out early in the season, there's really not much reason to be barking at players too often. It's not until we've taught it, we've drilled it, we've played it live, we've gone through all of the teaching, to then you can start holding a player to a higher standard. But and I know that a lot of the listeners are coaching kids that are maybe 8 years old, 10 years old. So it's a little bit different, but you're still, we've got to teach it before we can put them in a situation where they're like, would feel like they would want to have to go palms up.
Yeah. Well, I think that's just a good saying, is palms up, right? Don't go palms up. I love that, because it's short, it's quick, right? But I think going back to what you were saying about giving the kids what they need, again, if you think about it, well, let me address it this way. I think it just boils down to accountability, right? Yeah. And saying, for example, kid, oh, coach didn't teach me that and he's expecting me to do that. Well, okay, that might be the case, but ask, right? So we as coaches, we need to educate the kids, right? Well, I might be asking you to do something that you haven't done before, but then ask questions, right? Or I don't understand. And I think that empowers the kids to be part of the process. So how do you incorporate that into the way you're coaching your kids? And then to empower them to ask those questions, to teach them versus, blaming you and right.
Right. You have to create the space for the communication. I mean, well, we're going down a lot of paths because it's
exactly.
it's going to come down to trust. Like you have to build that trust. They have to trust you as a coach. And that's important. And they have, it's like that we've heard it. Like, it's not how much we know. It's just, how much they believe that we care about them. And then they'll be excited about what we know. So, but I think it's giving them space to be able to communicate, to teach them when to communicate, because sometimes it's the coaching doesn't need a response, because when kids respond, you're coaching them, and then if they feel like they're going to respond, now they're thinking about their response and they're not thinking about what you're telling them. I don't want to know why you made a banana cut when you should have made a hard cut. I want you hard cut, but then you also have to create space for them to, do you understand the why? The why is the critical piece, right? The why. Just, whatever listeners are going to take from this, I can tell you one thing about angles, that the game of basketball is really about three things, and it's timing, spacing, and angles. You can run whatever you're running. So just a nugget for, I mean, you don't have to make it more complicated than it needs to be. Just have good timing, have good spacing, have good angles. But so with a player, you just have to make sure that they do have the space and time to ask questions and feel like you're going to answer the question, and that they can come to you at the right. You just have to teach them what the right time is. We have 2 practices a week and we only have an hour each day. Like, it might not be in the middle of that you're going to ask me this question about just trust, and then we'll talk afterwards. And hey, Bill, what do you understand this? You still have a question about this? You look like you were a little confused. Let's talk about that. Keep notes of when they, those points of confusion, and then address it at the end of practice.
That's a good takeaway. And let's go back to what you said before, because I think this is part of the solution as well, is that trust factor. Is, back when we were growing up, it's like you did whatever the coach told you to do, right? You just did it, right? Today it's not quite the same way, but I also think maybe coaches did a better job of some of them, right, building that trust or showing that they cared. How do you do that? Start at your level, start at the high school level, and then how does a 5th grade mom who's coaching their kids plus all the other community kids, how do they do that?
Sure. I think you build the trust. Like, I build the trust in my players by making them understand that I care about them well more than just them as a forward or a point guard or a center. It's teaching beyond. Well, one of the things that we say a lot at Occolani's High School, where I coach, is that you got to separate performance from identity. So I don't want them to believe that all of my, any of my feelings towards them is going to be based on performance. I don't want them to feel that. And so we talk constantly about things other than basketball, so that they know that I care about them as a human being first, and then as a basketball player second. And that's a continual. It doesn't vary on certain days. And I think it builds trust also. Even go back to, where we started. If I'm not, if they know that I'm going to take full responsibility for what's happening, and that I always will take responsibility at the end of the day, in regards to, this is my team, and I'm responsible for all that goes on, that at least they appreciate that. And that's a piece of the trust. I think how the mom who's coaching a 5th grade kid, and maybe her own, and then the community, I think you build trust. You have less time, but you build trust from having really organized practices that show that you care about their well-being on the court. I don't think you have as much time, because you still have to, you're coaching basketball. So you don't have as much time for the after practice or the pre-practice, or calling them in at lunchtime at, go meet in a classroom. So I think the trust comes in the fact that you're organized, and you're not confused about what you're teaching, and you're doing the best that you can do, that then they can trust that in that way you have their best interest. So I think that's
great. Hey everybody, I'm jumping in here. Coach Bill has decided to help me out for the end of the school year, and daughter's graduating, so I really appreciate that. But I wanted to jump on and tell you how excited I am about coachingyouthhoops.com, something Bill and I have put together. It's going to improve your coaching. It's going to improve your player skills. It's for you with your busy schedule, everything you want, practice plan. There's nothing else like this. I'm telling you, very rarely do I get this excited unless I'm walking down Main Street at Disney World. I am telling you, you can print the practice plan. It's everything you need to be a youth basketball coach. It's a roadmap, everything. It's awesome, and it's at a very, very, very reasonable price. I'm on Bill about increasing prices. So if you're thinking about getting in, you better get in now before the next season comes around. But anyway, let's head back to the podcast.
Great, Bill, because I think that you're dead on. It's like you have 6 days a week, during the season, and like you said, now you're doing open gyms 3 days a week, and you're seeing those, in your case, the boys come in spending a tremendous amount of time. I was just talking to one of my gals too. She was gone for 3 weeks, and I said, "Do you realize that's the longest time that I have not seen you since your sophomore year?" Right. And she was just like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, you're absolutely right." But at the younger grades, what you said is gold, which is be organized, have a great practice plan. So, you can build trust that way through your knowledge. Right. And of course, they're still loving on the kids as much as they can, and bring them some cupcakes once in a while. And then, you'll see how quickly that trust builds right there. Huh?
Yes. You sprinkle that in. Don't make that the and to that coach, and I'm sure in other episodes you guys have talked about this, and you, as practice plans being very important to you, because you wouldn't market practice plans if practice plans weren't important. It's your passion. It's and one of the best ways to mess up a really good practice is to have a really good drill. Everything's going great, practice is great, and now you get to this drill and you forgot the one thing. What's the rotation of the drill? And once you lose that, and now you get a bunch of kids telling you what's the best way to rotate, you were there, and I'm telling you, it's a 10-point lead that now ends up in a 4-point loss.
Oh my gosh, you're absolutely right. I've had it happen.
The drills are important, but man, do not forget what is going to be the rotation, who's going off, who's going on. And don't once the kids start, it's now you get frustrated as a coach, and they're only really trying to help you. But so please do not miss, coaches. Don't miss that piece of what will, and I would always, in the plans, I would always write it down.
Yeah, that's
I
what
would
I do
write it
too. Yeah.
and always write the emphasis so I know what I'm teaching. I don't lose sight of that.
Yeah, what's the why? What's the major point? Yeah, yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, I spend a tremendous amount of time practice planning, and obviously I've created a business out of it to help coaches so they can understand it, because they don't, it's fall. That's when they start thinking about basketball again, right? And
Right.
then they're searching everywhere and finding drills to do for their season. It's like, okay, forget about it. Like, that's a lot of work. We've done it for you, done the hard work and hard lifting, and I'm constantly learning, right? Still about how to run an effective practice. I'm going to see, actually, he's coming up on a future podcast, another great coach in our area, Doc, and I'm headed down to watch one of his practices. So I don't know if you ever sat in on one of his, but
I didn't coach girls basketball long. I coached it for a season, but when I got hired, I reached out to Doc because I would encourage your coaches that listen, reach out to people. Coach will respond to you for the most part. And if one person doesn't respond, don't stop there. Like, be willing to have somebody not email you back or call you back. And a guy like Doc, he took me under the wing, and one of the things that he said that was so important is just, a lot of times people talk about basketball IQ, and that has a very broad understanding. Like, what is basketball IQ? But I don't say that anymore, and it's because of Doc Shepler. He says that it's about vision, decision, execution. He breaks it down to vision, decision, execution. What does the player see? What's the decision that they make based on what they see? And then what's the execution? And so generally it's one of those things. And a lot of times they see it right? They make the right decision, but the execution is incorrect. Yeah. So he's not going to talk about a player as he doesn't use the wording basketball IQ. I don't use it any longer. We're like, what did you see? What's the decision? Like, you saw it and you threw a bounce path, and but maybe there was something about the execution of the bounce pass. So vision, decision, execution. Hold that in your teaching, and it's a little bit of a game changer.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Yeah, I talk about I never use the word basketball IQ. I just talk about decision making. Yeah. Right. But yeah, no, vision, decision, execution. I like that. I'm gonna steal that one. And that's the thing about what we do, right? We steal and share and borrow from other coaches, and and I think that's an important piece. On this podcast, we try to break the game down into small nuggets, but it really is a simple game. It's a simple, you said it before. What did you say? You had another timing, spacing, and angles. Yeah. Right. That's the game. Right. Timing, spacing, and angles. Hitting the cutter at the right time, or setting the screen at the right time, keeping the spacing on the floor, on the court, right? The spacing even when you're setting a screen, and then the angles at which you come off that screen or attack, or even play defense for that matter too, right? So,
and say something to that, and hopefully I'm not going to offend anybody on here or people that have, and I've said these things, okay, but people will say on offense, they teach offense, if you're not moving, something's wrong. And I would caution someone when they're teaching spacing, timing, angles, teaching anything. At some point you have to stop so that you can read, but where you stop is important. And if you're going to stop, you should be behind the 3-point line, or you should be wide. But to teach a kid to think that he should or she should always be moving, it becomes difficult to read things if you're constantly, in motion. You shouldn't stand too long, but standing is okay. It's just where a player is standing. And so instead of teaching them they should always be moving, that what we want to teach is, when we stop, make sure that you've stopped wide, so that now you're not clogging spacing and
Yeah. Well, that goes back to the timing of when to stop and how long. It's all about timing, right? It's the timing piece, and that totally makes sense. Okay, let's go back to the palms up discussion. And so kind of just recapping that, it's the idea of holding you as a coach accountable for what's happening on the court, what's happening in practice, not pushing the blame on the kids. That's also a culture standard, right? That I'm assuming is part of what you create in all of your cultures is, don't push the blame on someone else. What did you do? What was your part? Can you maybe talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, I think it is born out of a culture of accountability. It's born out of a culture of always not being afraid to make a mistake. I mean, that's so important.
Mm-hmm.
That is so important. I mean, that is hopefully our coaches are teaching the game in a way that players are okay with making mistakes. John Wooden said it very well, that the best teams are the teams that make the most mistakes. Just don't make the same mistakes, right? But you want to encourage the mistakes, and so a player can make a mistake and then not feel like that would be his or her outlet. There's a sports psychologist, Graham Beckhart, who teaches palms down. He's a local guy here. Really, if anybody's interested in mind skills, and
maybe we can get him on the podcast too.
Yeah,
that'd be great. Yeah,
he would be huge. But it's just avoiding that sense that there's not removing responsibility from a moment. I think, like, as I do that, like as I'm saying that, I just the way that you feel when you do that. I want my players to feel like they have, that there's always something that they can do, something they could have done, and not that feeling of it's almost confusion. Like a kid asked me the other day, like, I'm kind of confused, and I'm one that I really, and the times are the times. I think a lot of kids got confused. A lot of the world got confused in the pandemic, and we're not that palms up didn't happen before, but as a teacher, I would hear that a lot. Like, I'm just confused. I'm confused, and I really try to temper that in my players. It doesn't mean that it's, if you're not clear, you're not clear. But I don't want them saying I'm confused. I think that's another one. Really, you're confused? Well, have you done X, Y, and Z? And most times you haven't done those things. So it's just too early to be, I'm confused, or what am I supposed to do? And now the championship game that I told you about, that was 30 minutes of just, basically being guarded by Steph Curry, and or guarded the way that Steph Curry is guarded. I mean, we hounded him. It was hard. It was, but that was a little bit of a different deal.
That makes sense. And talk about, I think this is an important topic too that comes off of this, is the parent player coach interactions. Again, going back to the parents pushing blame on the coach and not holding their kids accountable. How do you address that? You probably haven't had any complaints in your 30 years, so maybe this
never,
is all foreign to you.
Never.
But
well, yeah. One thing that I said, and there's so many. I mean, this is an entire podcast. But one thing that I've said to my players more recently, and I said it early on this, you want to separate performance from identity. Separate performance from identity. And I think parents need to do the same thing. Like, sometimes, Johnny's a really good player. That must mean that I'm a really good parent. Jane is not so good. And so then I take it somewhat personally, and I feel like I can't walk in the gym. I got to sort of like, oh my, she's not playing. And like, no, like So it's not pushing. And one of the most important things that parents can do for their son or daughter after a game is, if the player does not play and they come out of the locker room, they have it just they got to see a smile. They've got to see you happy. Even maybe you're inside, you're seething or whatever, you're upset, but you, because my fear is, and I hope, and I have kids now that are playing my son is 9 and he's playing, and my daughters are playing softball. And so I'm going to be in this situation. I don't want them to associate my happiness as a parent with their playing time.
Yeah.
And I just, as for the parents that are on that listen to this, it's so important that you greet them with a smile and they come out, because then it's like, well, if I played more, maybe you'd be happier. Like, you want to be careful that's being construed in that way.
Yeah, that's really great advice. So what happens though in that situation? You're in the car ride home, and give us some more advice here. Let's start with this player. Mom, I didn't get to play that much today, or I never get to play. Or Coach hates me. Right. So I'm driving now. What do I say to my son or daughter through your eyes, looking through this lens of accountability? Right.
Well, one thing I do is I ask my son or daughter right now, do you want to hear anything? Like, I don't start. Okay.
Yeah.
And well, can I just back up to what I say to my players?
Yeah.
That sometimes I go to my players and try to avert this. And I'll say multiple times early, I'll say it in the summer, like we start playing summer league and they're getting to know me. And if maybe, maybe the first or second game, somewhere in there, that if someone wants to engage in conversation about your teammate, about, the mistakes that they made, or, kind of the things that we're talking about, like you said in the car, that what I want our players to say is, that's my teammate. And I don't want to talk about my teammate. And if you want to go rebound for me, let's go get some shots up. Or you want to go play, we'll go dribble or what. But I'm not going to engage in conversation about my teammate. And so I really make sure that they're protective of their team, their teammate, and because a lot of stuff that can happen in a locker room in those first 5 minutes can really be damaged. So that is where I try to avert it from the player. I think coaches should communicate with parents. I think there should be a lot of communication. I would suggest or encourage coaches that are on here at any of the levels to welcome the conversation with parents. If you put a shield up, like, you're not going to talk, I'm not going to talk to you, I just think it, it's like the referee. It's like the referee that doesn't want to engage with you. That only makes it worse. It doesn't temper the problem. It just escalates it. So, obviously there needs to be parameters that get created, but don't. I don't want to say don't. I would encourage the conversation with parents, and you can diffuse a lot by having open line of communication. You're not going to win every battle. Sometimes it's just going to be one of the situations, but.
And that goes to the grade school level too, right? You're gonna, there's still lots of complaining down there. Even if you don't think there are, there's parents in the stands complaining about the way you run the game and what have you. And I think over communicating with parents on a weekly basis of just little things, what happened in practice, right? What you're learning that week, or what your focus is for that week.
Well, and if you
want to build
you want to build the trust, if you do just take the time to do a 15-minute weekly email. Just, hey, what we're doing, and these are the things, and this is what's, this is what we're focusing on, and this is where we, I think that is, 15 minutes of time that could really be valuable. The dividends would be great to something like that. And that's where you don't go up. Like, well, the parents, they don't,
That's
whatever
right.
I do, well, whatever you do, have you done a weekly email, or have you done sometimes you do a beginning of the season talk. Did you do a mid-season talk and with your parents? So that's the whole palm up. That's the whole, we practice well, just as coaches, as much as we can hold responsibility for what's happening, it just makes us look at all angles. We don't catch it all. You can't catch it all, but
No,
if you widen your scope, you're going to catch more.
Yeah. Well, Coach, let's wrap this up. Let's give me a few takeaways. So again, the focus of this, the palms up, the holding you accountable. If any what's the one message or a few points that you wanted the listeners, the other coaches out there to take away from today in our conversation?
Well, number one, thank you for coaching. Right.
Amen.
I think I would say reach out to people. It's okay to be inexperienced. It's okay to have weaknesses. I think I have them. I still have them, and I'm just going to continue to try to learn so that I can lessen them. I think, we could go. I could like this. Just when you challenge your players during a game, just make sure you're doing it for the right reason, and it's not to remove the responsibility. That's where this whole thing started from, right? I can't yell at my players these things that would potentially remove responsibility from the mistake that they're making and me as their coach. I'm always connected with that. And I want them to be connected. I want all coaches to be connected and to live those words of Mike Leach, because it makes us practice better. It makes us research more. It makes us make that extra phone call, because ultimately, if my players are going palms up, it's on me. If you come watch us play and we're not doing the things that I've either said on this podcast or, well, Rick Majerus said it, another rest in peace person that maybe people who don't know who he is, it'd be a good guy to Google. I'm sure you have some resources of it. He would walk in a gym and be able to tell right away what the three most important things are to without you telling them. He can just see it. You can hear it. You could feel it inside a gymnasium. So I think, think about what are the couple things that they want to teach, and then teach them and keep going back to, are they looking the way that you want them to look, and use practice time to change them. Get those practice plans that you have full, and
no, Coach, that's good, and I completely agree. And I think this idea of holding yourself as the coach accountable, you can take that on the practice field or court or in life. Again, there's that correlation between basketball and life, and I think that's a good one. I think that's a good one to instill in the players at a young age, is hold yourself accountable. I love the way you incorporate that into the idea of basketball and the palms up analogy. I love analogy. I love things that you can talk about, right? When you can see, your palms up, right? Because we're all there and we all get that, right? So I love that. Coach Powers, amazing. Thank you so much for your time. I know I appreciated it. I know coaches, our listeners will appreciate, and there's a lot of nuggets that you threw down today in your 30 plus years of experience. We appreciate you taking the time.
And if they want to reach out to me, you can always make my information available to them at email address or.
Yeah, you want to just say it right now, and then I'll put it in the show notes too. So.
Yeah, sure. They could reach out to Bill Powers, BILLPOWERS 2023 @gmail.com. And I'll be happy to respond, and anything I could do to help them in their experience in coaching.
Awesome, Coach. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And we'll talk soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, Coach, so glad you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed it a lot. Actually, if you did, subscribe and like, and then go over and check out teachhoops.com for coaches who want to get better.